well, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Kara Harmon. I am the Director of Program Services for Special Olympics South Carolina. So as my job, I oversee our health programs and that part of our organization. So we're just excited to have all of you here and provide some information for our athletes and their families. So we're going to go around our little Zoom table and introduce ourselves. So Casey, why don't you start? Just tell us who you are, what area you're from, and what sports you do.
Okay. My name is Casey Barker, and I am also from the I am from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina.
And tell them what sports you play.
And I also have played. I also have played the golf, tennis, basketball, swimming, horseback riding, and dancing.
That's awesome. And Casey, you are actually one of our newest athlete health messengers, which for those of you that don't know, our athlete health messenger program is where we train our athletes to spread the message of health. So they teach their fellow athletes how to stay active, how to eat right, and get access to the healthcare that they need. So thank you, Casey, for joining us. And I'm going to have Fran introduce yourself.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. My name is Fran Marshall. I work at DHEC and the Environmental Affairs side of the agency. My normal role is the director of the Office of Applied Science, but during the COVID pandemic, I've been assisting businesses with everything from initially from how to determine and handle cases in the workplace, then testing, and now vaccination is the theme of the day. So it's my pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. And now we're going to have Dr. Kelly introduce herself.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Jane Kelly. I'm the Assistant State Epidemiologist for DHEC. And right now, I'd say 99% of my time is working on COVID.
We are happy to have all of you here. It's great to get this information out to our population. But before we dig too deep into the COVID vaccines, can you explain what a vaccine is and how a vaccine helps us from getting sick?
Sure. I think of a vaccine as like a sneak preview. That's how they work. You know, if you go to the post office and you see a wanted poster on the wall that maybe has a picture of a bad guy, a vaccine is like that. It posts a picture for the white blood cells in your immune system, the cells that make antibodies, the cells that fight infection, gives them that sneak preview. They've seen that picture before. So if a virus comes into your body, they recognize it right away as a bad guy. So there's no delay, there's no waiting for them to make antibodies or to understand that this virus is going to cause disease. They attack it right away.
So that's great. So a vaccine really truly protects us and helps our body fight off whatever is coming to attack it. Now there's 3 different vaccines available right now for COVID-19. Can you explain the 3 different versions or the 3 different vaccine available?
Sure. And, you know, there are lots of vaccines around the world. Other countries have made vaccines as well. But there are 3 vaccines in the United States that have been authorized for use. And I'm going to call them by the name of the company that makes them. So there's Pfizer and Moderna. Those are 2 different companies. Those vaccines I'm going to talk about together because they're very much alike. Both of them require 2 doses, 2 shots. For Pfizer, you get one shot, and then 3 weeks later, you get your second one. For Moderna, one shot, and then 4 weeks later, you get your second one. And it's okay if it's a little bit later than that. It doesn't have to be right on the dot, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. You just don't want to get that second shot too early. They have to be spaced out to give your immune system a chance to respond. So those two, the Pfizer and Moderna shots, they've done a very clever thing. Instead of taking the whole virus to make a vaccine, they took just the gene, just the little piece of genetic code for one of the proteins in the virus. And that's what they make in their vaccine. The reason I say that's so clever is because the vaccine cannot give you COVID-19, the disease, because it doesn't have virus in it. It has just that one little piece of genetic code for that protein. Once that's in your system in a vaccine, your immune system, the cells that make antibodies, the cells that are sometimes called killer T cells, the ones that are going to recognize the wanted poster, they'll recognize that spike protein. And it's that spike protein that helps the virus get into your respiratory system, into your cells. By recognizing that spike protein, those vaccines stop it right then and there. They attack that spike protein. The third vaccine that's available is made by Janssen Corporation. It's also sometimes known as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Johnson & Johnson is the big parent company. They make lots of other products too. So I call it Janssen because that's the part of Johnson & Johnson that makes vaccines and medications. They do something similar. They just take the genetic code for that protein, but they package it up a little differently. They package it up by taking a common cold virus and weakening it so that it gets it into your system. But all three of these vaccines, they just focus on that one protein. So they cannot turn a test positive. They cannot give you COVID-19. They just prime your immune system, stimulate your immune system to recognize that spike protein. The nice thing about the Janssen vaccine is it's one and done. You know, you get one dose, you don't need to get that second dose. But all three are excellent. All are very effective in preventing severe disease, preventing hospitalization, or preventing the worst outcome of somebody dying from COVID-19.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think, Casey, you've got the next couple of questions. Do you want to ask the third question?
Sure. Okay. Are they 100% effective in preventing COVID-19?
An important question. They are not 100% effective in preventing COVID-19. No vaccine is 100% effective, but they are highly effective. They are all 100% effective in preventing death and hospitalization. And by that, I mean that no one who has gotten any of those three vaccines, no one who has gotten those vaccines has ended up in the hospital or dead from COVID-19. Some people do get mild symptoms, so it is possible to get an infection after you've been vaccinated, but if you do, it would be mild illness.
If not 100% effective, why should we get vaccinated?
A couple of reasons. So number one, I said they are 100% effective in preventing death. So if you want to stay out of the hospital and survive, they will absolutely help you with that. What about that mild disease? Well, some people, even when they get mild illness, it hangs on and hangs on. There are people who have developed something that's called long COVID, where they may have symptoms that hang on for months of fatigue, just feeling tired all over, or achy all over, or feeling short of breath, or for someone like you, an athlete, feeling like you just can't keep up like you used to. You can't play like you used to. And so the vaccines are not 100% in preventing disease, but they are 100% preventing death, and they help to prevent that long COVID syndrome where you have symptoms for months and months.
What are the most common side effects after receiving the vaccine?
All three of these vaccines have certain symptoms after you get your shot. The most common one is pain in your arm where you got your shot. That almost 90% of people report having at least mild to moderate pain in their arm after they get the shot. Usually not the day they got the shot, but the next day. Most of the time, that only lasts 1 or 2 days and then resolves, goes away. Some people also feel tired all over, achy all over, maybe a headache, maybe have fever or chills. But again, that's usually mild to moderate, 1 or 2 days after you get your vaccine. And it's a sign that your immune system is responding. So it's a good sign when people feel those symptoms.
One of the questions I just kind of thought of, but if somebody doesn't feel any side effects, is the vaccine still working?
Vaccine is still working, even if you don't get those side effects. It's true that some people, usually older adults, don't have as strong a response to the vaccine, but they have designed these vaccines to be like super powerful in stimulating your immune system. And I mean that literally. Like if you compare antibody levels in somebody who had the disease, who had COVID-19, compare their antibody levels to somebody who got the vaccine actually gives you much higher antibody levels. So they've designed it to give you that super reaction. So if you're one of those people who got the vaccine and you didn't have too much in the way of symptoms, that's okay. Your immune system is still responding, just maybe not as rigorously as somebody else's.
Okay. Now, this vaccine was developed rather quickly. So I think a lot of times we hear, it was developed so fast. Is it safe? What do you have to say for that?
It seems like it was developed, overnight, right? It seems like we never even heard of this virus until January 2020. And in less than a year, we have a vaccine. How is that possible? That's not really telling the whole story. There are 3 basic steps to making a vaccine, or for making a new medication for that matter. The basic science research, learning about the virus, finding out what its weak points are, finding out if you were going to make a vaccine, what would be your target, then testing it in animals, and then testing it in humans. Well, that first step, that basic science research step, far and away, that's the longest step. And for this virus, do you know when that step started? Do you remember SARS-CoV-1? The original severe acute respiratory syndrome? That was back in the year 2003. It was a virus, came out of China, infected about 8,000 people worldwide, and it was a pandemic. We had cases in the United States also, but it got contained, meaning as soon as they were able to get quarantine in place, isolating people, wearing masks, quarantining those people who were sick, they were able to stop it. It was not as contagious as SARS-CoV-2, but it's very closely related. So the basic science research actually started 17 years ago. It started in 2003, where they were studying this virus, and it is very closely related to SARS-CoV-2. So when SARS-CoV-2 appeared on the scene in January, they already had a lot of research. I think it's really telling that all of the vaccines that we have in the United States, both the ones that are available right now and the ones that will be applying soon, they all focus on that same protein that I mentioned. They're all looking at that same protein because they learned in those 17 years, that's the weak spot. That's where we need to go with a vaccine for this virus. So when we say, how could it be safe and effective? This vaccine was made in just 1 year. I thought it took many years. It does take many years. We have had many years of basic science research, but there's another bit to this. So I said we had all this basic science research. January 10th, we had the genetic code for this virus. So scientists could already start working on a vaccine on that genetic code. They got it into animals as soon as February of 2020. And as soon as it was proven safe in rodents and in monkeys, they started testing it in humans as soon as March. Now, here's the other thing that's different. Most of the time, when a company makes a vaccine or a medication, they take years of testing it in humans. Why? Because it's expensive. It costs a lot of money to do human studies, to do those what are called phase 1, 2, and 3 trials. Because you have to hire doctors to examine the patients, you have to reimburse them for travel or for other expenses, you have to pay for all the blood work. So usually companies will do it a few hundred people and then look at the results and say, well, this looks good, let's do a few hundred more. If it looks okay, they'll do a few hundred more. What was different for these vaccines is that the US government and other governments around the world, they invested. They gave those companies money right from the start. And they said, go ahead and recruit everybody that you need, get them into the studies right away. And in fact, for Pfizer and Moderna, the first vaccines that were out, they enrolled over 30,000 people each within just 2 months in June and July. They got all these people in the studies right away. So there were no steps skipped. It's just that they were overlapping. And because they were able to get thousands, tens of thousands of people into the study by midsummer, they had results by December that they could go to FDA and get approval. So I understand it feels like this was rushed, but people forget about those 17 years of research on SARS-CoV-1. It paid off big time when we talk about a vaccine for SARS-CoV-2.
Yeah, I know. That makes me feel better knowing that little tidbit for sure. Now, I know some of our athletes and their families and coaches and unified partners, they might have already had COVID-19 and recovered. Do those individuals still need to get vaccinated?
We do still recommend, even if you've had COVID-19, that you get vaccinated. And here's why. Remember, I mentioned the antibody levels you can get from the vaccine are even higher than the antibody levels you get from the disease itself. That's because that's how they designed these vaccines to be super powerful. So even if you have had COVID-19, that's great that your immune system has responded to it. But do you want to make your immune system even stronger? Go ahead and get the vaccine. That will give your body more of an opportunity to fight it off if you ever have to face that virus again.
We're talking about, when our immune system is well protected and how long it lasts. One of my questions is it advisable after your second vaccine and you wait a while to be tested for antibodies?
I'm so glad you asked that question because there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. So the answer to the question is actually no, which might be a surprise, but let me explain. When you're exposed to the virus and you get COVID-19 and you recover, you make antibodies to all parts of that virus. When you get the vaccine, you are making antibodies and other immune response just to that one protein I mentioned, that spike protein. Now that's a critical protein. That protein actually, it acts like a key in a lock to open the door so that the virus can get in the cell. So if you can block it right from at the spike, then you can block getting infected. But if you go to the store, go to pharmacy, go wherever, get your antibodies drawn, what kind of antibodies do you think they routinely measure? The routine antibody test measures things like antibodies to the nucleocapsid, to the whole virus, to all these different parts. So your antibody test might be negative because it's measuring the wrong thing. It's the wrong antibody test. You would have to have a spike protein antibody test, which is available, but you'd have to ask specifically for the spike protein antibody test. but it's not recommended. And the additional reason is, everybody knows about antibodies. People have heard of antibodies. So usually people haven't heard about things that I mentioned, the T cells and B cells, but they are critically important in your immune response as well. And those are things that are not easily available as a blood draw. Those are like special tests that are done in research labs. So even if you didn't have high levels of antibodies, there are other things in your immune system that are going to kick in to protect you.
If I have underlying health conditions, should I be worried about getting the vaccine?
There are no contraindications to getting the vaccine. By that, I mean, if you have an underlying medical condition, including things like HIV, or including things like heart disease, liver disease, kidney disease, there is no harm to getting the vaccine, and there's a lot of benefit. Right now in the United States, we have more than 125 million people who have gotten at least one dose of vaccine. And CDC has been following them closely to find out if anybody might have some, 1 in a million reaction. We have vaccinated many people with all sorts of different chronic medical conditions, and we have not seen any safety concerns. One thing I will mention, though, people who have a poor immune system, meaning that they're immunocompromised, maybe because they're taking medication that suppresses their immune system, or maybe they were born with some condition where their immune system is not 100%. The vaccine might not protect them as well as somebody else who has a normal immune system. You should still get vaccinated. There's no reason not to. It will still help, but it may not help you as strongly as someone with an immune system that is intact.
So once I've received my vaccine, how long before I'm protected?
Once you receive your vaccine, we recommend that to get the full benefit of the vaccine, that you can consider yourself fully vaccinated 2 weeks after your last shot. So if you're on Pfizer or Moderna, that's 2 weeks after your second shot. Or if you're with the Janssen vaccine, that's 2 weeks after the one shot that you get. It looks like some people will continue to get even stronger and stronger immunity as time goes by, but we consider you fully vaccinated 2 weeks after that second dose. Your first vaccine gives you some protection, but it's not as strong as when you get that second dose. That second dose is really important for long-lasting protection.
That kind of leads me to my next question, but how long does this vaccine last?
Well, we know from, remember those people I was talking about were in the phase 3 studies back in June and July. So we have information from them that here we are, how many months later, 8-9 months later, and they still have high levels of antibodies and other elements of their immune system, like T cells and B cells, or other things in your immune system besides antibodies. Those are all highly protective 8-9 months out. So we think vaccine is going to be long lasting, but how long, we don't really know yet. Is this a vaccine where you need to get a booster every year, like you get the flu shot? Maybe. Maybe it'll be a vaccine like the tetanus shot, where you need one every 10 years. We don't know yet, but things are looking good for it being long lasting.
Now, what can I and what can't I do after being vaccinated? Like, do I still have to wear my mask? Do I have to avoid crowds, restaurants, etc.?
So remember, only about 25% of people in the nation are vaccinated, right? So 75% of people are not vaccinated yet. So I'm going to break my answer into 2 groups. When you go out in public, sure, you're vaccinated, but you might pick up the virus and have no symptoms, but be contagious for a short period of time, and you wouldn't even know it. So we are asking people, even after you're fully vaccinated, if you're in the grocery store or you're at school, or you're going someplace where you're exposed to other people, protect them. Wear a mask, keep your distance, wash your hands, all those same measures. If, on the other hand, you're fully vaccinated and you want to get together with somebody else who is fully vaccinated, the good news is you can. If both of you are at least 2 weeks out from your second shot, you can get together, but I'm talking about in private, like getting together in one of your homes without masks, without having to be distant. Yes, you can hug the other person. Yes, you can talk and sing and play a board game together or whatever. But so we're asking in public, please keep doing what you've been doing to protect other people who are not vaccinated. But in private, you can get together in a small group with other people who are fully vaccinated as well.
Awesome. I see a lot of hugs in our future. So that's a good thing.
It'll be good.
Yes, absolutely. So obviously there have been, false stories swirling the internet and swirling news stations. So there's a few things that I picked up that I would love for you to tell us if it's true or false. So the first one is, now that we have vaccines, the pandemic will be over very soon. Correct? True or false?
I wish. Unfortunately, there are some people who do not want to get vaccinated. That it's sort of all over the map, right? There are some people who are anti-vaxxers. They are anti all vaccines, not just this one. And they just don't want to get vaccinated. And that's their right. That's their business. And then there are people who are clamoring for vaccine, really want to get vaccinated, but they don't, we don't have enough vaccine to go around yet. So they're not vaccinated yet. And then most people are falling somewhere in the middle where they think they want to get vaccinated, but maybe they don't want to go first, or they're not quite ready yet. But even after we get everyone vaccinated, I think this virus may still hang around at a low level. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't really say for sure. No one can say for sure what is going to happen. But I think more and more experts are thinking after we're all vaccinated, that will save lives. We won't have people getting severe disease and going to the hospital, but that there's still going to be some low level of this virus kind of coming and going. We'll have to wait and see. But no, this is not going to be over like that. It's still going to take some time to get everybody vaccinated. We still don't have a vaccine for kids under age 16, but they're working on that, and it's looking good. And there is hope that we will have vaccine for younger adolescents, kids age 12 through 15, and maybe even for kids under age 12 by the time the fall school semester comes up.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I know a lot of parents out there are wondering about that, so that's good. Another statement I read, we don't know what's in these vaccines. There could be microchips in them, I know
what's in these vaccines. I can tell you what the ingredients are. Now, how do I know that? I know that because when these companies apply for approval or authorization from FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they have to produce a long document, it's about 70 pages long, that has all the information. We're not looking at just their press releases. We are looking at a scientific document, 70 pages long, that goes through many other of the details of the trials, those phase 3 studies. It even includes the results from the animal studies, but it also must include the exact ingredients. So all 3 of these vaccines, the active ingredient is that piece of genetic code, but the other things that they have put in these vaccines are all inactive ingredients. All 3 of these companies were very careful to make sure that they didn't put in any ingredients that people have problems with. For example, some people have problems with there being aluminum or mercury that was used in vaccines in the past. So they made sure no mercury, no adjuvants, no thimerosal, no aluminum, no antibiotics, no preservatives. The only things that are in these vaccines are the inactive ingredients to try and protect that piece of genetic code so that it has time to get into your immune system. So it has some salts, all three of them. They have certain salts, including sodium chloride, normal table salt, some sugars to help keep it from clumping together. And an ingredient called, for Pfizer and Moderna, they have an ingredient called polyethylene glycol. Now, I know that's a scary sounding chemical name, but you know, it's in a lot of over-the-counter laxatives. It's just a type of oil. The Janssen vaccine doesn't have polyethylene glycol, but it's got something else called polysorbate 80. Again, it's a special kind of oil. Polysorbate 80 is actually used in a lot of foods. I mean, it's in ice cream, it's in salad dressing, you know, anything where you want to get that smooth, oily consistency. There are no microchips in these vaccines. These vaccines cannot change your DNA. I know people are concerned about that, and I want to make sure that, you know, they get the information so they can make their own decision. Why do I feel? How do I know they don't have microchips in them? I know because I look through the document to see what is listed. And I understand there are people who are going to say, what's to keep them from lying? Well, I guess I cannot answer that question other than to say, I know how big microchips are. You know, like you give a microchip to your pet. You know, I don't know if anybody listening has a dog or a cat that you've chipped. The needle that they use for that, getting that chip in, is 5 times the size of the needle that's used for a vaccine. So I can't even see a physical way how they could insert a microchip through that vaccine needle.
Great, great. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but the third statement that's been floating around a lot is, will the vaccine alter my DNA?
The vaccine cannot alter your DNA. So what is in these vaccines is just that one piece of gene for this spike for the protein. It's called the spike protein. And in Pfizer and Moderna, they don't contain any DNA. This virus doesn't use DNA. We have DNA. We as mammals, we have DNA in our genetic code. The virus has something that's related molecule called RNA. So Pfizer and Moderna, they don't have any DNA at all. They just have this RNA, and it gets destroyed quickly in the cell. It enters your cell, and your immune system starts making antibodies, and that RNA is broken down. The Janssen vaccine, instead of using RNA, they use DNA, but it's virus DNA. It doesn't get into your DNA. And it's same thing. It is engineered to be destroyed. As soon as it stimulates your immune system, the immune system turns around and attacks it. So it gets destroyed. It cannot change your DNA. If we could change your DNA, we could cure diseases that have genetic errors. We could cure sickle cell disease. We could cure cystic fibrosis. Those are genetic diseases. We could cure things if we had that ability to change your DNA. So we don't have the science. These vaccines do not change your DNA.
How do I get the vaccine?
So right now, our vaccine in South Carolina is open to everyone age 16 and above. You don't have to have a special medical condition. You don't have to work in a special job. And as long as you're 16 and older, you can get vaccinated in South Carolina. And I think, Fran, you might be able to show us how one can get an appointment to get vaccinated.
I would love to. On the DHEC webpage, there is a vaccine locator. And because, as Dr. Kelly mentioned, everybody 16 and older now is eligible as of today. You don't need to worry about which phase you're in. You just need to know where to go get a vaccine. So you can do 2 things here. I'm going to do one thing real quick. You can touch the view the map, and it will show you a map of the whole state of South Carolina. The green dots are places that have doses available. The red dots don't have doses available, but it changes daily, so you can go back and forth to it. But if you want to go back to, hang on one second, close that down. So if I go here and type in my zip code, so let's say 29210 and hit enter, it's going to give me a list of the 75 closest locations to me. It gives me a phone number to call, an address, and it tells me whether they're accepting eligible appointments. And it also shows me which vaccine manufacturer they are giving at that location. So that's the best way to go about finding a vaccine. Thankfully, there are more and more doses available. We really had a very severe shortage initially. That's what required us to kind of go at a phased approach with this, to get the doctors and frontline healthcare workers vaccinated first. The people in long-term healthcare facilities were also in that first batch. And then we started gradually increasing the number of people eligible. But again, now, today, everybody in the state who's 16 and older can make an appointment.
Yeah, and I think, Fran, you just answered our next couple of questions, so that was perfect. And it is good because today everybody 16 and older can make an appointment. So I love that we're kind of in this phase now. So if you feel comfortable and you want to make an appointment, you're able to do that. You don't kind of have to wait or try and figure out all the different phases and if you qualify or if not. One question, if our athletes need assistance or their families need assistance with making an appointment, how can they go about doing that?
1-866-365-8110. If you call that number, they can't make you an appointment, but they can help walk you through the system. There is another way besides the Vax Locator, and that's something called CVAS. CVAS. And I wonder if you can pull up CVAS while I talk about it. Scroll down a little bit. This is the COVID-19 vaccine patient screening. Now, this will not have all those pharmacies, Walgreens, etc., vaccine locations. This will only give you some of the health department vaccine places, but you can see at a glance which ones are available. So this is only the DHEC clinics, but it includes some of the mobile clinics as well as others. Yes, so click the box. I certify I have read and accept the South Carolina's policy. And now we're going to get started. Now it's going to ask you some questions. So go ahead and just answer some questions. Let's say, yes, you're over 18. This is your first dose. And it wants you to pick a place. So just click on one of those. Here, we're going to go to Abbeville, and boom, you've got days starting tomorrow. You could get vaccinated there. Click on that, and there's a list of times. So starting tomorrow, you could get vaccinated on any one of those times. If you click on one of those times, you select a time, they're going to ask you a few pre-screening questions. They're going to ask for, your contact information. They'll ask for some other bits of information like allergies or whether you've had COVID before, or whether you've had treatment with monoclonal antibodies, just some other things. But this is a very easy way to make an appointment. So you've got two ways you can make an appointment: using the Vax Locator or using cvas.dhec.sc.gov.
That's great. That seems very simple.
It is, but it's limited locations. So that might not be as convenient. There might be a Walgreens right down the street from you that would be more convenient, but it is an easy way to look and see if there's vaccine near you.
We've come a long way from the early VAM system of registering.
Yeah.
I know. And, this is great because it's very straightforward. It seems very simple. And we will definitely share both of these websites with our athletes and their families. But I love that because not everybody, loves being on technology. They're not tech savvy, but this seems very straightforward. So
yeah, I like CVAS because you can see at a glance very quickly what places have vaccine, and it's easier to make an appointment. The only downside is that the number of different places. It might mean you'd have to drive a little bit further. But in fact, I would always go to CVAS first to look see what might be close to me. And we're opening up CVAS to more and more places.
Great. Now, Casey, I think if you just want to jump down to question number 15, I think that's all you.
So how do I encourage others to get vaccinated?
I'll say a few things and then I'm gonna let Dr. Kelly bring it home because I know she's good at that. There's resources on our webpage at DHEC that you can find if you go to outreach materials, and I'll share all these links with Kara. But the most important thing you can do, Casey, I believe you said you've already gotten your shot. You can talk to your friends and say, I got my shot. And yeah, it hurt for a second, or maybe was sore for a day, but now I'm vaccinated and I can do a lot more things and I'm safer because of it. So a lot of it is just talking to our friends and providing personal stories about what we've done and why we've done it. I can tell you personally, I felt a great sense of relief when I got mine, not because it's a, get out of jail free card, but because I don't have to worry about dying alone in a hospital from COVID. Now that I have a vaccine, I feel really good about that. So there are materials, printed materials on CDC's website and DHEC's website that I will share links to if you want to print out information to share. But I think a lot more credible it comes from just person-to-person contact and sharing your firsthand experiences. Dr. Kelly?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Among the people who've been surveyed by different organizations like Kaiser Family Foundation, they do monthly telephone surveys asking people about vaccine hesitancy. When they ask them, what is it that you need to know? What information do you need? Some of the most common replies are that they want to know about side effects. They want to know about what symptoms you feel after vaccine. They've got some very basic questions, but among the people who have said that they have decided, they have moved from being, I want to wait and see, and they've moved into the camp of, yes, I want to get my vaccine. The most important thing was that they spoke to somebody or they knew somebody, friends or family who had been vaccinated. So I agree 100%. A big thing you can do to encourage people is to just talk about your experience. Now we've got over 1.2 million people in South Carolina who have had at least one dose of vaccine. So it's really likely that each of us knows at least one other person who has been vaccinated. The more we can get people talking about it, I think the less fear people will have. People are hesitant because they're afraid, because this is too new. They're worried. Sometimes they've heard really severe stories, like through social media, that somebody had a really bad time with vaccine, but that's rare. Most people, when they get vaccinated, yeah, they have a sore arm or they don't feel great for a day or two, but most people get over it then, and then they're protected. So I think the best thing you can do to encourage people is tell your story, share your story.
Great, thank you.
Well, and Karen, I just want to mention real quickly that the screen that I have up on the screen now, the page is on our DHEC website. If people want to track how we're doing, it shows 16.5% of South Carolinians have completed their vaccination. About 30.5% have had their first shot. So you can kind of track this if you're interested in numbers. It's kind of a fun way to look at both the numbers and the percent complete. We hope that yellow is going to fill up those rainbows here at some point in the near future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, this is great. The one last question is kind of one that I'll ask, but I'll also answer. But I know people are thinking, do I have to have the COVID-19 vaccine to participate in Special Olympics? So we have started slowly returning to play over the last week or so. And so we're starting to get our feet wet with getting back into practices, getting back to sports. But the bottom line, the answer is no. You don't need to have a vaccine to participate in Special Olympics. However, we strongly, strongly encourage you to make that choice. As Dr. Kelly mentioned, by vaccinating yourself, you're also helping to protect others. So we want to make sure that we do that with our population. So we encourage you, but it is not required. So we hope that this conversation, maybe you were able to get some more information out of it, and feel a little bit more comfortable with getting that vaccine and knowing where to go, and that the process is much simpler now. So I want to thank you, Dr. Kelly and Fran, for just answering our questions. I know there's going to be a lot of great people out there.
I just wanted to say this one thing. If people think of questions, they can submit them to you and you can get them to us. They can certainly contact us at DHEC. We don't want anybody to go around with unanswered questions. If we can help them understand the issue better, we want to do that. So thank y'all for participating in this today. Thank you for hosting it. And please let us know if you have questions. Please let Kara know, or we can certainly provide you our contact information. You have ours, I know, but
Yeah.
To let us make sure we are answering questions that come up, because we don't want anybody to walk around with unanswered questions if we can help.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, Fran. I will definitely forward any questions on to both of you, should they come through. I think hopefully you've answered a ton of them for us, but absolutely, if anything comes through, I will definitely pass it along, and we'll get those questions answered. So again, thanks, Shaw. Thanks for taking the time. Casey, you are a wonderful co-host. I enjoyed having you ask some of the questions with me. You are awesome.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. Well,
Thanks for organizing this. This was great.
Yeah, definitely. So you guys have a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll stay in touch. And hopefully we can help make those numbers go up. So
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, you guys have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye.
All right.